Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome back to Global Media Network, LLC. Passionate World Talk Radio is a wholly owned subsidiary of GMN LLC. Our slogan is, and always will be, educate, enlighten, entertain. And today, the month of June, is also Gay Pride Month. And as a result, we are going to be discussing during the entire month of June the LGBT community, gays, lesbians, and transgender. So I'm going to start. Lillian Cauldwell. The other hosts are Lisa Skinner and Betsy Worso. Lisa will follow me next and take up where I leave off, which is the don't ask, don't tell, and everything, including the AIDS epidemic that really threw as I say, a locomotive into the direction in which the gay pride movement was going. And then Betsy has her opinions, and we will be discussing them, especially in the military. So I'm going to start. Now, I did not do a universal take of lesbians, transgender, or gays. Overseas, the way they treat the transgender people are quite different from how they're treated here in the States. In fact, continent of Africa, the law says they have the right to shoot them. But we're not going to concern ourselves this week about the universal targeting of gay and lesbian people. But just a little side note, if you want to know where the word lesbian came from, it comes from the Greek island of Lesbos. Now, we don't know if there were gay people living on that island so long ago, but that's where the word lesbians originated, or at least that's what I was taught when I went to school. Of course, it could have been propaganda. It's very difficult to tell true history from propaganda because, as you know, it's always the winner of wars who get to write the history. Therefore, I'm telling you right now, source that I got most of my information from was the History Channel, and you can go look them up. It's https://topics-gays-rights-history-of-gay-rights, and they're very thorough. And if you permit me or indulge me, I'm going to be using my notes. So in 1924, a German immigrant by the name of Henry Gerber came to Chicago, and he established the Society for Human Rights. And it was the first documented gay rights organization in the United States. And when he served in World War I, Gerber was inspired to create a new organization by the name of the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, which was a homosexual emancipation group that he formed in Germany, which wasn't good for his health because in the 1938, all homosexuals were forced to wear pink triangles on their prison garb to signify that they were gay. And the concentration camp was at the Sachsenhausen, and they have a picture of all these men, shaved heads, with this large pink triangle. But ever heard the expression, what goes around or what comes around goes around? Further on in the 20th century, the gay movement adopted the pink triangle and wear it proudly to signify that they are gay. So think about that. Then in 1928, so we're going back 10 years, the English Author and poet Radcliffe Hall stirred up controversy when she published a lesbian novel, The Wall of Loneliness. In 1948, another 10 years, Alfred Kinsey wrote a book called Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, which proposed that, and I quote, sexual orientation lies on a continuum between exclusively homosexual to exclusively heterosexual, unquote. By 1950, Harry Hay founded the Medicine Foundation, which was the first gay rights group. In Los Angeles, they coined the term homophile to tag and describe homosexuals and their sexual activity. Later on, the Homosexual Foundation was created to improve the lives of gay men through discussion groups, and related activities. In 1952, founding member Dale Jennings was arrested for soliciting, but the jury was deadlocked and he walked away and was acquitted. In 1952, Dale Jennings created an organization called One Incorporated, and it welcomed women, and it published the first gay magazine in the United States. In 1953, Dr. Jennings was ousted from One because he was a communist. Guess you can't be a homosexual and a communist at the same time. In 1958, the magazine One won a lawsuit against the U.S. Post Office when they tried to prevent the magazine from being delivered because they considered it obscene. And they refused to deliver it. In 1955, the Medicine Foundation restructured themselves and began publishing a second magazine called the Medicine Review. And in that same year, 4 lesbian couples in San Francisco founded an organization called Daughters of Bilitis, which was a published newsletter. And the newsletter was called The Ladder, and it was the first lesbian newsletter ever published in the United States. In 1952, an American psychiatrist listed homosexuals as a form of mental disorder. Well, I guess it is, sort of, depending how you want to look at it. In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed an executive order that banned gay people of sexual perversion, and they were prevented from taking jobs with the federal government. In 1960s, you had what was called the Stonewall Inn riots. In 1961, Illinois became the first state that had anti-sodomy laws. And in California, they were the first document that was called The Rejected was put out on homosexuality. 1965, Dr. John Oliver, who was a sexual hygiene and pathologist, they came out with their own following, along with Christian George, and they began they looked at providing surgery for those people who wanted to change their gender. In 1966, members of the Medicine Society in New York City staged a, quote, zip in, which they visited all the taverns. And what happened was that the sellers started to, and they would announce, I'm homosexual, do something about it. And of course, everybody who was in the tavern started throwing beer bottles and produce into their faces. So the New York police were called in. And the whole thing exploded into a 3-day riot. That brings us up to 1970, where the Christian Street Lutheran had the first gay parade. 1977, the Supreme Court ruled that transgender women could play at the U.S. Open tennis tournament, and that was Renee Richards. So she was there before Billie Jean King, who you remember came out after she won her gold medal. In 1974, Kathy Cuz, a transgender, won a seat in the Ann Arbor, Michigan City Council, which was unheard of since they were forbidden to run for federal office. And then Harvey Milk, in the late 1970s, became the first San Francisco city supervisor. And he openly was a gay man with a gay boyfriend, because in those days they didn't call them husbands. In 1978, Gilbert Baker designed an emblem, a symbol for the gay transgender community, and that was the multicolored flag. And in 1979, more than 1,000 people took part in the first National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. So you should know this all started, at least openly, in 1920s. And it's been an uphill battle ever since. Lisa?
Yeah, and things are escalating from where you left off. And I can't help but think, here we go again. Are we once more on the brink of another atrocity? The signs are certainly there. We are talking this time about the transgender population. So far, we've talked about the Holocaust and how the atrocities against the Jewish population were, now a very egregious part of our history, with 6 million people being annihilated. We've presented information for you about the Japanese internment camps that were instituted against American Japanese after Pearl Harbor was bombed. They had nothing to do with it. They already were Americans, were living here, but America was worried that they were spies for Japanese. So they put them in concentration camps. We've just finished our series on the genocide of the indigenous Native American population. And what was the message that came out of that? The same message that has come out of our research on every atrocity that we have presented to you. People, the majority of the people, don't like the minority of the people that are different. They have darker skin. They have different religious beliefs. They believe in the spirit world. Whatever it may be, those groups are the ones that eventually are targeted. And now we are seeing this happening with the transgender and, well, we're talking specifically about transgender population today, but it's also true of the gay and the lesbian populations as well. And again, the common theme, what? They're different from the norm. at least in the people who see them that way. And it's scary. People behave based on fear and lack of understanding. And I think that's a common theme that we have seen throughout our series since we started it. So what is this telling us? Is history about to repeat itself once again? Well, let's explore what's happening with the transgender movement and why we are hearing so much about it in the media, just like all of a sudden. It is a recent movement that is getting a lot of attention today, but it's turning into a controversy that resembles so many others that we have seen throughout history. Since 1999, advocates have gathered to commemorate transgender victims of violence. November 20th is now the Transgender Day of Remembrance. That's as of November 21st, as of this past November, 2021 was the deadliest year yet of anti-transgender violence in the United States, exceeding the record 44 transgender people whose deaths were recorded the year before. Violence and harassment against transgender people are widespread in the United States. And I'm quoting this information from a survey that I read about this situation. And I will give you that reference at the end of what I'm going to share with you. So in this survey, and it was an extensive survey, one transgender advocate told the Human Rights Watch organization that virtually every transgender person can recount and recall instances when they have felt fearful for their safety and security in public. We saw that same sentiment, or we heard that same sentiment by Chinese Americans during the pandemic. Remember, they were being targeted because there were people out there who blamed, if you were of a Chinese descent, then it was your fault that we were all dealing with COVID-19 in the United States, and those people just arbitrarily and randomly were being attacked. This is our way of thinking, and we are demonstrating this to you over and over and over again with every single one of these series themes that we are researching. Violence and harassment against transgender people are widespread in the United States. Recent debates over transgender rights have only increased the visibility of transgender rights. So the more we talk about it, the more people are starting to resist and resent it. If it's swept under the carpet, don't ask, don't tell, then we just pretend like it's going to go away or it doesn't even exist. But the more we bring it to our attention as a society, the worse it appears to get. In this survey, it said people have increased hostility towards transgender people as well, with lawmakers and media personalities unfairly demonizing transgender individuals as, and it's exactly what Lillian said, mentally ill. They're using the word predatory. We heard that about the Jewish population that was part of the propaganda against them. And dangerous. Reports suggest that bias-motivated crimes targeting transgender people narrowly escape violence, where transgender people then are reluctant to report violence to police for fear of re-victimization or where law enforcement officers fail to document and respond to violent means that estimates almost certainly undercount the scope and prevalence of these crimes. The topic of anti-gender violence frequently appears in news coverage when fatal violence has occurred, and the number of people killed each year is often used as a rough proxy for bias-motivated violence against transgender people more generally. Isn't this all sounding way too familiar? But transgender people are frequently subjected to other forms of violence, including harassment and violence from strangers, family violence, intimate partner violence, and police violence, which may be even less visible to lawmakers and the public. You think? The violence and discrimination that transgender people experience is deeply intersectional, according to this article, with different forms of vulnerability shaped by race, gender, class, ability, nationality, among other factors. In 2020, more than 3/4 of the transgender and non-binary people, which means they don't claim either sex, killed in the U.S. were people of color, with Black transgender women at particular risk of violence. From 2016 to 2021, at least 88% of the transgender people killed were in Florida. 91% of the transgender people killed were in Ohio. And 90% of the transgender people of color were killed who lived in Texas. Data suggests that the compounding effects of discrimination significantly limit transgender people's opportunities and ability to keep themselves safe. When transgender people face family rejection or are kicked out of their homes at a young age, they're unable to get an education and find employment. They're unable to find work in informal and unregulated economies where violence is rampant. They grapple with homelessness and housing insecurity and are unable to obtain gender-affirming health care and accurate identification. They have to rely on public transportation and facilities where they are scrutinized by others and are turned away from anti-violence resources and emergency services. They may be repeatedly exposed to violence with little ability to escape it, often running from one form of violence to find themselves just facing another. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but our government does have an obligation to respond to foreseeable threats to the life and bodily integrity of the American citizens, including by addressing patterns of violence against specific groups of people. However, the United States, and I think this is pretty obvious to all of us, is falling short of its international obligations to remedy the structural conditions that give rise to anti-transgender violence and to provide assistance and deliver justice to individuals when this violence occurs. But to meet its human rights obligations, the sentiment is that the United States should adopt more anti-discrimination protections to address the structural discrimination that the transgender people face. Ensure that services are available and competent to serve transgender survivors and end practices that minimize and diminish the real effects of anti-transgender violence when it occurs. But I need to ask you, think about it. Is that happening? Now, while the administration of President Joe Biden has taken steps to address anti-transgender discrimination, transgender people continue to face widespread hostility in many parts of the United States. In 2021, lawmakers introduced a record number of anti-transgender bills, just like Lillian said, in the state legislature, seeking to restrict transgender people's access to health care, to bathrooms, sports, and recreation. People interviewed said that such actions make them worry even more about their safety in open public places. Now, only 21 states expressly prohibit, this is current, 21 states in the U.S. have expressly prohibited gender identity discrimination in employment, in their housing opportunities, and for public accommodations under state law, leaving transgender people in many parts of the country particularly vulnerable to mistreat. So 21 of our states. These views differ even more sharply by partisanship. Now, I find this interesting because I don't have the exact detail. They didn't want to get that detail into it. You can read it when I give you the resource. But the views on transgenderism and lesbianism and being homosexual, they do vary by age group. You know, the baby boomers view it. Some of the baby boomers view it, or how the baby boomers view it, it could be very, very different from how Gen Z views it and how the millennials views it. So they did go over that in detail. But the thing that I found really interesting, and I am going to share this with you, is that these views differ even more sharply than by age group, by partisanship. So let me tell you what information they provided. The Democrats and those who lean to the Democratic Party are more than 4 times as likely as Republicans and Republican leaners to say that a person's gender can be different from the sex they were assigned at birth. And that statistic is 61% of Democrats versus only 13% of Republicans believe that it's okay to want to be a different sex than you were born to. Republicans, no, 13% don't think that that is acceptable. Now, Democrats are also much more likely than Republicans to say that our society has not gone far enough in accepting people who are transgender. Now, this statistic is 59% of Democrats say that versus 10% of Republicans. And then for their part, 66% of Republicans feel that society has gone too far in accepting people who are transgender. So to close, I'm going to let you know that amid a national conversation over these issues, many states are considering or have put in place laws and or policies that would directly affect the lives of transgender and non-binary people. Again, those who don't identify as either a man or a woman. Some of these laws would limit protections for transgender and non-binary people. Others are aimed at safeguarding them. The survey finds, this is the survey that I gathered this information from. The survey finds that a majority of U.S. adults, 64%, say they would favor laws that would protect transgender individuals from discrimination in jobs, housing, and public spaces, such as restaurants and stores. But there is also a fair amount of support for specific proposals that would limit how trans people can participate in certain activities to navigate their day-to-day lives. So this report comes from the Pew Research Center, and you can find it at www.pewresearch.org, and then /social-trends. And we will post it on our blog, so you'll have the resource there to probably click on or refer to. But it came from the Pew Research Center, and you can read all the details about it if you go to this resource that we're going to cite for you. Thank you.
Now comes Betsy. I just want to interject one thing. Last night on NBC News, the following story appeared where sponsors or backers for the transgender parade that was supposed to take place is no longer doing it because people refuse to enter their stores. They have put a boycott on the stores who supported the parade. Those who had carried merchandise for transgender infants, toddlers, children, and adults, the people from different states either destroyed it or threw it on the floor, and they refused to buy. So many of these large stores, and I'm talking about Target, and I'm talking about, well, Amazon won't lose too much business, but there are other stores, that Kohl's, that had their garments out on display, and the tremendous force back from the consumers about carrying that type of merchandise caused them to put it all in the back of the store. So what does that suggest to you?
I know, I watched that too. It was just mind-blowing.
Talk about the brown shirts in Germany.
Yeah.
Talk about the book burning in Florida. Talking about governors in the southern states demanding that racial and prejudice history can't be taught. Texas saying only white history and only what we dictate. People, wake up. Betsy, your turn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you, Lisa. Not only is June Gay Pride Month, but I want to mention it's also Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. So if you have any concerns about your memory, please see your primary care physician. Why am I bringing that up? As Lisa and Lillian mentioned about health, and people are not treated equally in the health industry. There's a lot of transgender and the LGBTQ plus community do not feel comfortable going to a doctor. They don't feel comfortable when they go to an emergency room. They don't feel comfortable looking for support. Alzheimer's, as I say, and you can quote me on this, I said this years ago, is an equal opportunity destroyer. Doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, transgender, whatever you are. So I just want to give a shameless plug to my group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. If you're looking for a support group, you're transgender, you're in the LGBTQ plus community, come join my group. All walks of life are welcome. I am from the school, live and let live, okay? Let be. You don't have to agree. I say this all the time, even on my own show, with someone's lifestyle. You don't have to like it. No one's asking you to like it. But does that give you the right to hurt someone, to belittle someone, to kill someone? Absolutely not. And I am just so disgusted with the hatred and the bigotry that goes on. And I'm going to keep repeating myself, and I don't care if I sound redundant. Where is our humanity? Where's our brotherhood? I don't care if you're gay, straight, whatever. You can be the color purple. I don't really care. I treat people accordingly as they treat me, or vice versa. I take each person as they are. But I have interviewed on my show, Chatting with Betsy, many people from the LGBTQ plus community. I even interviewed someone who's a social worker who is married to a partner. They have adopted children. She had to carry papers with her all the time, proving that they were married, proving that they are their children. Who else does that? Do you, as a biological parent, carry papers that you're really a parent of your son or daughter? No. So why should someone in the gay and lesbian community have to carry papers to prove it? We need to start treating people equally, even if you don't approve of their lifestyle. And I think they are now teaching in medical school, what you would call sensitivity training. There are, I've heard this a lot in my interviews with people, they are afraid of how they're going to be treated. And now you're going to see LGBTQ plus community going into nursing homes, going into assisted living facilities. Are they going to be treated with the respect and dignity like someone who is straight? I certainly hope so. And what about, in nursing homes, assisted living, people don't like to talk about, sex, and people that are older. It goes on, folks. Are they going to allow people who are transgender and the LGBTQ plus community to be alone, to have their relations as the same as they would do straight people? I would hope they would treat people equally. There's concerns. A good friend of mine, her wife died from COVID. She was afraid that her wife would be treated differently because she's gay. Why should someone have to worry about that? Do you worry about being treated differently because you're straight? I don't think so. But this is a fear amongst the transgender and gay and lesbian community. They're afraid of being treated differently, of not getting the care that someone else would get that's straight. When I was a nurse, I treated everyone the same. When I worked in retail, I treated everyone the same. I treat people how I want to be treated. And that's how we should treat people. How would you like if it was your loved one that was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and you're looking for a support group and no one's going to accept you because of who you love? So we need to embrace people. And I often compare the Stonewall riots, how the gay community came out and proud. And I said that the caregivers should also come out and be proud. Be proud of your caregiver. And that has to do with the Brain and Alzheimer's Awareness Month. People just dismiss people who are different than us, don't we? We fear the unknown. My mother's cousin, this is in the 60s, he was kicked out of his home because he was gay. I didn't know that until I was much older. I knew Morton was gay. It was whispered. I didn't think anything of it. I just read a book. I'm going to interview someone this month. She knew she was gay at a young age. She was in foster care. She was beaten because she kissed a girl. Do we have to do that, folks? Must we have to beat people up because of who they love? How would you like to be beaten up because of who you loved as a straight person? I really feel for anyone who gets mistreated or abused. And I think the climate of this country is getting to where you're going to see more attacks on people, transgender, gay, lesbian, Jews, Chinese, Asian. You're going to see that. And I think it's going to get worse, as Lisa wanted me to say about atrocities. I think it will be another atrocity. I really do. You could just see the writing on the wall. Now, I don't believe in getting into politics, but I will say this, and I'll be devil's advocate here. I don't care what you are, but from a female, and I didn't play sports myself. It's really hard, for women to have gotten on a sports team to have sports. If a man that's biologically a man and then says he's a woman, wants to be on a women's sporting team, I think they have the advantage because they're stronger. Men scientifically are stronger than women in the upper body. Of course, there's always the exception. And I don't think that's fair. I think maybe transgender people should have their own sporting competition. I also think that prisoners in jail, and they have better medical care than we do. I don't think my taxpayer money should pay for their operation to change. Let them wait until they're out of prison. If I can't afford to have surgery with my stinky insurance that I had, I don't think my taxpayer money should pay for someone's surgery, for reconsignment surgery. They could wait. There's, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, that a doctor would tell you wait till you're 16 or 18 to have certain cosmetic surgeries done. Maybe these young men and women should wait till they're 16 or 18 to make sure this is what they want. Because once you change it, I don't know if you could unchange it. I don't think so. It's very serious to consider these things. And before people say, oh, Betsy, you're transphobic, you're homophobic. No, I'm not. I'm not. I just think that it's unfair to the women who have tried to be competitive with sports. And now there's people who are saying that their women are taking their spots. Now, if I was on the losing team, yeah, I'd want someone who was stronger and maybe help win my team win. But that's how I feel. And I just want to remind people, remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat people fairly. This merchandise, and I saw it on TV. People are offended about, a woman's bathing suit for a transgender guy. What's the big deal? It's just another clothing article in the store, right? You don't have to like it. No one's asking you to buy it. So why can't we just let it be? I don't see the big deal of clothing. I mean, come on. You may not like certain products that are in the store. Do you boycott the store because of that? Let me tell you, folks, if you go back and learn about history, you wouldn't buy Bayer aspirin either. You want to know why? Because they supported the experiments going on in the concentration camps. How about that? How about some of these companies that are anti-Semitic that didn't let Jews in? You're going to boycott them? Maybe you should think about that too while you're boycotting other places. And that's what I have to say. I got carried away. Thank you.
Passionate World.
Thank you for listening to me.
You're welcome. And people should also understand the other great quote that I'm always throwing out. He who is out sin, she who is out sin, let them cast the first stone. Think about it. Would you like to be the recipient having a stone hit you? I've had them thrown at me. They hurt when they make impact. And there's nobody here in this country, last time I looked, who is free of sin. Not one of them. Not from the churches, not from the synagogues, not from the temples, not from the mosques. Every one of us has some kind of sin that we have done or taken God's name in vain. Gosh, I hear it all the time, even from 4-year-old kids. Why? Because they learn it from their parents. The call to action for today is wake up, people. Or, as the people of Germany realized, it can and it will happen to them. Human beings do not like to lose, and they'll never be a victim. It's always someone else's fault for whatever happens of the ills in this world. So right now they're concentrating on the transgender. Hey, they can come over and say, your kid is left-handed, sign of the devil. Burn him at the stake. He's anti-Christian. That's what the Inquisition was about, folks. Spain. Yes, well, we want to thank you very much for joining us today. Call to action. Be gentle with your next door neighbor and be gentle with yourself, because whatever goes around comes right back around. Please remember that. So if you would like to contact me, talk about some of the information I shared with you today, email is pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. Lisa?
Yes, you can email me if you'd like at dementiawhisperer1@gmail.com. And thank you again so much for listening to everything that Lillian, Betsy, and I had to share with you today. We appreciate you being here very, very much.
Betsy?
Sloan, SLOAN, Betsy, BETSY, 31@gmail.com. And thanks for listening.
We want to thank you all for listening. You can revisit with us at https://youtube.com/PWR network _PW Talk Radio, on Facebook.com/Passionate World Radio. And also you can catch the audio on our player at https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. On June 9th and June 16th, we will not be on the air, but we will be back following, continuing the discussion about the transgender, not only in the United States, but across the ocean. Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.